I wanted to ask you a few questions about why did you decide to write about that subject?
The impulse or the compulsion to...
The cameras flashed, the public cheered, but inside the palace walls, someone was about to explode. Why did this one announcement trigger a royal storm? The royal family's latest proclamation seemed, at first glance, nothing more than a graceful gesture. Prince Louis, cheeky, playful, and universally adored, had been awarded a rare and historic title. A title not heard in decades. A title many assumed would go to someone older, someone already steeped in the monarchy's intricate traditions. But no, on this day, the youngest son of William and Catherine was suddenly thrust into the center of royal destiny. His name now stitched into the fabric of British history, with the weight of a crown he had yet to comprehend. The announcement arrived in the quiet way palace decrees often do, a short line in the court circular, then echoed by a polished social media post. But its impact was anything but quiet. To the outside world, the choice to honor Prince Louis struck a chord of delight. Commentators praised the family's decision as a move that captured the imagination of a public hungry for sincerity. Little Louis, with his unfiltered laughter and his unstudied charm, embodied a monarchy that felt accessible to humans, even. Newspapers ran glowing profiles, celebrating his endearing personality, his resemblance to his late grandmother Diana, his undeniable ability to captivate even the stiffest of crowds. And yet, while the crowds cheered and papers gushed, inside Buckingham Palace, the announcement rang differently. Palace insiders immediately recognized its deeper meaning. A move far more calculated than the public would ever suspect. This was no simple act of honoring an adorable young prince. This was strategy in motion, a chess piece deftly placed on the board, declaring where power would reside in the next generation. It wasn't just about Louis, it was about legacy. About sending a message that the future of the monarchy would remain firmly rooted in Diana's bloodline, untainted by competing claims or blended family politics. And so the photographs of Louis smiling at public engagements were splashed across front pages as though nothing more existed beyond that charming grin. But those who truly understood palace politics, those who knew how power moved quietly between silk curtains and closed doors, could already sense the consequences brewing beneath the surface. Because in that same moment of triumph for the Wales family, another figure stood in the shadows, her expression tightening, her patience finally fraying after years of forced composure. Queen Camilla, who had weathered decades of disapproval, who had fought to build her own fragile place in royal life, was now watching it all crumble in silence. But while the world applauded, Queen Camilla was quietly reaching her breaking point. How did the monarchy's cheekiest little prince become its newest strategic weapon? From the moment Prince Louis could toddle into view, he enchanted the nation. His playful charm, those unrestrained giggles at solemn events, his candid mischief during ceremonies, seemed to melt the stiffness of royal formality. Where others bowed and curtsied, Louis laughed. Where protocol demanded silence, he spoke, and the public adored him for it. In his unfiltered sincerity, they saw a flicker of something they thought the monarchy had lost: authenticity. Crowds cheered louder for him than anyone expected, and headlines lauded him not just as the youngest Wales child, but as the royal family's irresistible spark. Behind closed doors, William and Kate watched this unfold with quiet intent. To the world, their smiles appeared as proud, doting parents. But in the privacy of their discussions, they began to recognize Louis's natural ability as something far more consequential. While George carried the burden of destiny and Charlotte polished the art of diplomacy, Louis seemed untouched by expectation. He carried himself with an ease neither of his siblings could afford, radiating the kind of unstudied charm that could soften even the harshest critics of the crown. That rare quality didn't just endear him to the public, it positioned him as a figure the monarchy could wield to great effect. And so, when the time came to bestow a title, the choice was deliberate. Not just for the boy, but for what he represented. The title chosen for Louis was heavy with history, a once revered designation tied to military valor, regional authority, and quiet power. Reviving it wasn't merely ceremonial, it was symbolic. A signal that Diana's bloodline remained at the center of the monarchy's narrative. By placing this ancient honor on the smallest of shoulders, they reminded the world exactly where the future lay. Not in compromise or half measures, but in the children who carried that legacy forward. This move also revealed a deeper truth. The monarchy was evolving not away from tradition but toward a more relatable, more human image. Louis's appointment was more than an adorable headline or a charming photo opportunity. It was calculated, a boy with genuine appeal, a name tied to royal history, and the sparkle of Diana's memory all wrapped into one irresistible package. This was no accident. It was strategy in its purest form. But as Louis rose in the public eye, Camilla's silent campaign was collapsing behind the scenes. For years she played the patient consort, but Queen Camilla had a plan of her own. Long before the announcement of Prince Louis's historic title, Camilla had been quietly, almost invisibly, nurturing ambitions for her own family. She knew from the moment she stepped into royal life that her children and grandchildren would never carry royal blood, but that didn't stop her from believing they deserved recognition. While the public fixated on William and Kate's children, their birthdays celebrated in headlines, their every smile analyzed and adored, Camilla's family remained in the shadows. Her grandchildren stood politely at the margins during royal events, unacknowledged, yet impeccably behaved, while the cameras followed George, Charlotte, and Louis at center stage. Behind those palace doors, Camilla worked to shift that balance. She was not loud about it, never demanding, never overt. But those who paid close attention could see how she subtly positioned her grandson during state events, seating him just close enough to the action to be noticed, just far enough to avoid accusations of overstepping. She made sure he was in view when photographers were near, occasionally drawing attention to him in conversation, as though planting a seed in the minds of those who controlled the royal narrative. In her vision, her grandson would one day stand alongside the Wales children, not as an equal heir, perhaps, but at least as a symbol of inclusion, a quiet acknowledgement of how far the family had come. Camilla believed deeply that Charles would support her. After all, hadn't she stood beside him through decades of hostility? Hadn't she endured endless scrutiny, trusting that her loyalty would one day bear fruit not just for herself, but for her bloodline? She was certain that he would find a way to modernize the monarchy, to reflect this blended family, to show unity through a small ceremonial honor, perhaps a ribbon, a medal, a courtesy title, something that would signal to the world that her family belonged to. But Louis's elevation shattered that dream. In one silent, calculated move, all those quiet efforts, all those polite ambitions, collapsed. The title she thought might one day touch her grandson's shoulder instead fell upon the cheeky boy who already commanded the nation's heart, Diana's grandson, Kate's son. That single act didn't just affirm Diana's legacy. It erased the possibility of Camilla's family sharing in it. What looked like a triumph for the Wales family felt like a slap to Camilla, and she wouldn't stay silent for long. 2 women, 2 legacies, and only one crown of influence. This was more than a title. It was a battle of bloodlines. From the outside, their interactions appeared flawless. Kate and Camilla stood side by side at ceremonies, exchanging polite smiles, their voices measured and graceful when the cameras drew close. But behind the carefully staged moments was a tension thick enough to unsettle even the most seasoned courtiers. For while Kate moved quietly and with purpose, she carried with her the memory of a woman the public had never stopped mourning: Diana. Every step Kate took seemed to echo Diana's resilience, her warmth, and her unyielding connection to the people. That memory became a weapon Kate never needed to unsheath outright, because it already cut deep enough to keep the nation spellbound. The public's love for Kate wasn't just admiration, it bordered on devotion. Every photograph of her, every gesture of kindness, every measured word reminded them of what they believed the monarchy could and should be. In her, they saw grace not forced by crown or protocol, but lived with quiet dignity. Diana's legacy shimmered through her presence, and no matter how hard Camilla tried, that was a shadow she could never escape. Camilla, meanwhile, bore her own scars. She had endured decades of public condemnation to stand where she did. But even after years of loyalty to Charles, even after surviving storms that would have crushed others, the affection she sought never fully came. She could not command the people's hearts the way Kate did. Instead, she fought for relevance behind closed doors, lobbying, arranging, persuading, always hoping that time and perseverance would grant her the same respect bestowed so easily upon Kate. As time passed, the rivalry hardened. Courteous in public, their eyes rarely betrayed the chill that lay beneath their interactions. Behind those polite nods and exchanged words, the truth grew sharper. This was not simply a clash of personalities, but of histories. One carried Diana's memory like a crown of light, while the other bore the burden of a past too complicated to forgive. And though neither spoke of it directly, everyone in the palace understood the breaking point was inevitable. And then came the moment that shattered Camilla's restraint once and for all. No pearls, no smiles, just rage. When Camilla snapped, the palace trembled. It began with a headline, as so many royal storms do. That morning's paper, delivered to her breakfast table as always, bore a front-page tribute to Prince Louis. Diana's bloodline secures the crown. It declared in bold letters, framing the young prince as the embodiment of everything the monarchy wished to project: innocence, continuity, and beloved heritage. But it was the final line that ignited the fire. It spoke of the Wales family's unshakable hold on the future of the crown, a future rooted entirely in Diana's descendants. To Camilla, it was more than praise. It was a public erasure of everything she had endured to stand beside the throne. The first teacup crashed against the floor before the staff could react. Servants froze as the sound of china shattering echoed down the hallway. Camilla's fury came fast and sharp, her voice rising above the hush of the morning. She shoved plates aside, silver rattled, and a stunned footman stumbled back as she demanded to know how they could humiliate her like this. Words poured from her in a torrent of accusations that she had been cast aside, her family dismissed, her own place reduced to a shadow. Every polite silence she had held onto over the years fractured in that instant. She didn't stop at the breakfast room. With her anger boiling over, she stormed through the corridors, her footsteps loud, her presence impossible to ignore. The courtiers scattered as she flung open the doors to Charles's private study. There, she unleashed the full weight of her anguish. Accusing him of betrayal, she railed at him for allowing this to happen, for choosing Diana's children again and again, while hers remained invisible. Her voice cracked as she accused him of letting Kate win, of making a mockery of everything they had endured together. At that moment, the queen consort unraveled completely. Years of bitterness, of quiet exclusion, of standing at the edge of royal photographs and watching others bask in the glow of public devotion, all of it rose to the surface. She felt humiliated. She felt abandoned. She felt erased. The mask of composure she had worn for decades was gone, leaving only raw emotion behind. The palace aides who witnessed it would later describe it as a scene they would never forget, not because of the noise or the fury, but because of the quiet devastation that lingered when it was over. And yet, even as Camilla's fury scorched the palace corridors, Kate stayed silent, but her influence only grew stronger. While Camilla erupted, Kate played the quietest and smartest game in royal history. Even as the palace trembled under the weight of Camilla's fury, Kate never raised her voice, never appeared rattled, never even hinted at conflict. Her moves had been made long before the announcement ever reached the public. Months earlier, she began quietly planting the idea of Louis's elevation, never demanding, never framing it as a challenge to anyone, but suggesting, in her calm way, that it was time to formally acknowledge what the public already felt. Little by little, she won the support of aides, of William, even of the king himself, not with force but with reason, her arguments wrapped in deference yet impossible to ignore. This was not merely a mother advocating for her child. Kate understood the significance of every gesture within those walls. She understood that Louis's promotion would do more than recognize his charm. It would reinforce Diana's legacy in the eyes of the world, a legacy that the monarchy needed if it hoped to retain its legitimacy. She understood that, while Camilla fought for acknowledgement through titles and ceremony, the real battle was for the hearts of the people, and that was a battle Kate had already won. She never confronted Camilla outright. There were no sharp words exchanged behind closed doors, no defiance in public. Instead, she let her actions speak. She waited, and when the moment came, she delivered her masterstroke. The announcement landed not as a declaration of war, but as an inevitable truth so seamlessly executed that even those closest to the decision could not trace its origin to her. That was her brilliance. Her hands appeared clean, but her fingerprints were everywhere. The day after the announcement, she appeared at a charity event with Louis at her side, her expression serene, her posture unshaken. There was no triumph in her gaze, no outward acknowledgement of the chaos she had set in motion. Yet everyone watching understood what had happened. With a single quiet campaign, she had secured her children's place in royal history and reminded the institution who truly commanded its future. In that moment, Kate proved herself to be more than the Princess of Wales. She demonstrated that she had become the monarchy's most formidable force, not through conflict, but through precision. Not by demanding respect, but by earning it with every quiet, calculated move. But this wasn't just about Kate versus Ree. Camilla the king was caught in the middle of their silent war. Duty, love, and loyalty collided, and the king was left grasping for balance. For King Charles, the decision to support Louis's title was not made lightly. He understood its political weight immediately. The monarchy had always relied on symbolism, and the public's faith was waning. In William and Kate, and by extension, their children Charles, saw the future of the crown. Their popularity was unshakable, their connection to Diana's memory undeniable. If the monarchy were to endure beyond his reign, it had to plant itself firmly in the hearts of the people, and that meant reinforcing the Wales family as its centerpiece. There was no denying that the title for Louis, though controversial, was a necessary step toward that future. And yet, as soon as the ink dried on the proclamation, Charles felt the cost. For years he had promised Camilla more than a crown. He had promised her respect, inclusion, and a place of honor for the family she brought with her into the fold. Granting Louis the title was not just another chapter in royal tradition. It was a painful, public signal that her family would remain excluded. He hesitated, hoping for a compromise, but he quickly realized there was none. To deny William would be to undermine the next generation. To deny Camilla, though, was to risk everything he had built with her. Still, he chose the monarchy over the marriage, and that choice left him cornered. In the hours after Camilla's explosive outburst, Charles attempted to soothe her. He reminded her of the institution's needs, of how titles carried centuries of history and expectation. He spoke softly, pleading with her to see reason, to understand that the decision was not personal. But his words fell flat. The damage had been done, and no explanation could erase the humiliation she felt. When she stormed out of his study, he was left sitting alone, staring at the floor, realizing just how fragile the peace between them had become. For days afterward, he withdrew into himself. He avoided unnecessary engagements, his presence at court subdued, his energy dulled by the weight of his own choices. It struck him then that the crown he had waited his entire life to wear had become a battlefield, not between nations, but between two women who each believed she was fighting for the soul of the monarchy. And yet, even as Charles struggled to hold the family together, the monarchy moved on without waiting for him. One title, one child, and the entire future of the monarchy tilted toward a new dynasty. The weight of Louis's elevation reverberated far beyond the moment it was announced. On the surface, it seemed ceremonial, a charming boy, given a historic title, a nod to tradition. But in reality, it was a calculated signal. With that single act, the monarchy declared where its loyalty, its narrative, and its future truly lay. Louis's title became more than an honor. It became a promise that Diana's bloodline would remain at the very heart of the crown's story, that the next chapter would not be written by compromise but by blood, duty, and the unbroken thread that bound the public's love to the Wales family. And the public understood. They didn't just applaud Louis because of his antics or his endearing smile. They saw him as the embodiment of everything the institution needed to survive: innocence, continuity, and a connection to a woman they still mourned decades after her death. The Wales family became the monarchy's anchor in an uncertain sea. George, the steadfast heir; Charlotte, the graceful diplomat. And Louis now is not just the mischievous youngest, but the unexpected weapon in a battle for relevance. To the nation, they were no longer just royal children. They were the monarchy's future. Meanwhile, Camilla's family stood further from the center than ever before. Despite her years of quiet lobbying, her subtle maneuvers, and her endless patience, her lineage was left out of the royal narrative. Watching from the sidelines, Camilla saw her efforts reduced to nothing as the spotlight fell fully, irrevocably, on the Wallaces. No medals, no titles, no recognition for her grandson, only silence. It was a silence louder than any rejection she had endured before. And at the center of it all, Kate emerged not merely as the Princess of Wales, but as something far greater. In the eyes of the public, she had become the perfect balance between royal tradition and modern grace. Within the institution, she commanded quiet respect, her influence undeniable, yet never ostentatious. The monarchy was no longer simply surviving her presence, it was thriving because of it. With Louis's title, the royal family reasserted itself as a symbol of controlled evolution, honoring history, without surrendering to the weight of it. A monarchy rooted in duty, but aware of the public it served, now steered subtly but surely by a woman who understood the delicate dance between affection and authority. But behind those golden gates, old wounds still fester, and the next move in this royal chess game remains unwritten. The crown remains, but the players are changing, and the next chapter could be the most shocking yet. For all the order restored on the surface, Camilla's silence in the aftermath of her outburst was not a surrender. Those closest to her insist the resentment still simmers, darker now, buried but unforgotten. Behind her courteous smiles, there remains a quiet determination not to let her family's name vanish from history entirely. In the secluded corners of the palace, whispers suggest she has not abandoned her ambitions, that she is simply biding her time, waiting for a moment when the tides might turn in her favor. And the monarchy, for all its ritual and rigidity, has never been immune to the unpredictability of human nature. Meanwhile, Kate's quiet mastery of the royal game continues to evolve. Every gesture she makes, every appearance she chooses, shapes how the monarchy is seen and understood. Her strategy is subtle, yet relentless, amplifying the connection to Diana, cementing her children's place at the center of public affection, and ensuring that her influence is felt even when she says nothing at all. There is a quiet power in her restraint, a calculated patience that seems to outmaneuver those around her without effort. And then there is Charles, visibly aging under the strain of it all. The endless balancing act between his duty as sovereign and his fractured family weighs heavily on him. Insiders say his moments of hesitation have grown longer, his resolve less certain. The fatigue in his eyes suggests more than just the burdens of kingship. It is the exhaustion of a man who realizes he may never be able to unite those he loves. Whispers already hint that he may soon pass the mantle entirely to William, not in name, but in practice, stepping further into the background as the younger generation takes center stage. The public remains firmly in the Wallace's corner, but history has shown how fickle that loyalty can be. For all the admiration, the monarchy walks a tightrope above scandal, its every move scrutinized by a world hungry for cracks in the facade. Already, speculation is brewing over whether Kate's dominance will inspire quiet resistance from within, or whether Camilla's suppressed anger will one day explode again with even greater consequences. And beyond the gates of Buckingham Palace, the modern world waits, demanding a monarchy that adapts, that justifies itself, that proves it still belongs. The stakes have never been higher, and every decision now feels like a gamble with history. One thing is certain, the monarchy's story isn't finished, and the next move could change everything. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. See.